John Winston Lennon was born on October 9, 1940, in the middle of an air raid. While the world fought a war, a little boy took his first breath beneath the roar of bombs. His father, a sailor, was rarely home. His mother, Julia, loved music, carefree and spirited. But John grew up mostly with his strict Aunt Mimi, who gave him structure when life gave him chaos. From a young age, John was sharp, witty, and rebellious. Teachers saw trouble, friends saw brilliance. He loved to draw, write, and make people laugh. But beneath that humor was a deep loneliness. Liverpool, still recovering from war, offered little excitement until music arrived. Through the docks came American records, Elvis, Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry. Their sound hit John like lightning. He said it felt as if God had spoken through Elvis. Music became his escape, his voice, his rebellion. Then came tragedy. At 17, his mother Julia was struck by a car and killed. John never recovered. That pain, that sense of loss, would echo through his songs for the rest of his life. He built walls of sarcasm and wit, but inside was a boy still calling for love. Out of that pain, he turned to music, forming a small band with schoolmates. None of them could imagine what was coming next, that this little group from Liverpool would soon become the Beatles. John Lennon's journey had begun, born from loss, rebellion, and a desire to be heard. In the late 1950s, Liverpool was pulsing with a new sound, rock and roll. And in that rhythm, John Lennon found his purpose. He started a band called the Quarrymen, a group of local teenagers who played skiffle, a rough mix of folk, jazz, and blues. It wasn't perfect, but it was loud, raw, and full of fire. One summer day in 1957, fate stepped in. At a local church fair, John met a quiet, baby-faced guitarist named Paul McCartney. Paul was younger, but when he picked up a guitar and played 20 Flight Rock, John was stunned. Here was someone who could match his talent, maybe even challenge it. That moment sparked one of the greatest songwriting partnerships in history. Soon after, Paul introduced George Harrison, the youngest of them all, and later came Ringo Starr, completing the legendary lineup. Together, they weren't just a band, they were a force. They called themselves the Beatles, a mix of beat and Beatles, inspired by their love of rhythm and wordplay. By 1962, after countless nights playing in smoky clubs in Liverpool and Hamburg, Germany, they were unstoppable. The long nights, the sweat, the noise, all of it sharpened them into one of the tightest bands the world had ever heard. When Love Me Do hit the airwaves, the world took notice. The haircuts, the charm, the humor, it was all new, electric, and irresistible. The Beatles weren't just making music anymore. They were creating a movement, and John Lennon was at the heart of it. By 1963, the Beatles had become more than a band. They were a phenomenon. Teenagers screamed their names, news cameras followed their every move, and entire cities shut down just to catch a glimpse. They weren't just topping charts. They were rewriting pop culture itself. John Lennon, with his quick wit and biting humor, became the voice of a generation. Reporters loved his sarcasm, fans adored his honesty. But behind the fame, he was struggling. Fame gave him everything he thought he wanted: money, recognition, power, yet it couldn't fill the emptiness he'd carried since childhood. During these whirlwind years, John married Cynthia Powell, his college sweetheart. They had a son, Julian, but John was rarely home. Between tours, recording sessions, and interviews, he was slipping further from the quiet life he once knew. He later admitted, "I was playing a part, I wasn't really me." Then, in 1964, the Beatles went to America, and the world exploded. Their appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show drew over 70 million viewers. The Beatles became global icons overnight, but success came with pressure. Endless touring, screaming fans, and no privacy. John began questioning everything: the fame, the system, even himself. He once said, "You don't need anybody to tell you who you are or what you are. You are what you are." And soon, someone would come into his life who would change everything, challenge him, inspire him, and push him to find his true voice. Her name was Yoko Ono. In 1966, at an art gallery in London, John Lennon met Yoko Ono, a Japanese artist known for her experimental and thought-provoking work. She wasn't impressed by fame or fortune, and that intrigued John. While everyone else saw him as a Beatle, Yoko saw the man behind the music. Their connection was instant, intellectual, emotional, and creative. Yoko introduced John to the world of modern art and political expression, while he brought her into the heart of pop culture. Together, they became something no one had seen before, a couple that blurred the line between art, love, and protest. But the world wasn't ready for it. Fans and tabloids attacked Yoko, blaming her for breaking up the Beatles. They called her controlling, strange, and divisive. John, however, saw her differently. To him, Yoko was his mirror, the first person who made him feel seen and understood. Inside the band, tensions were growing. The Beatles were changing, musically and personally. John was no longer the same man who wrote "Help" or "I want to hold your hand." He was searching for meaning, for peace, for something real. In 1969, John and Yoko turned their love into activism, staging their famous "Bed-In for Peace." Instead of hiding from the press, they invited cameras into their hotel room to spread one message: give peace a chance. For John Lennon, love wasn't just personal, it was political. And through Yoko, he found a new kind of freedom, one that would lead him away from the Beatles and toward his own voice. By the late 1960s, the Beatles were no longer the four boys from Liverpool. They were legends, but legends with cracks forming between them. Fame, money, and constant pressure had changed everything. Each member had grown in different directions, and creative differences started to tear the band apart. John Lennon, once the heart and soul of the Beatles, was now drifting away. He was exploring new sounds, new ideas, and a new identity alongside Yoko Ono. Their joint projects, like Two Virgins and The Ballad of John and Yoko, shocked fans. Some called it genius, others called it madness. But John didn't care. For the first time, he was creating without boundaries. Inside the studio, tensions boiled. Paul wanted structure. John wanted freedom. George felt overshadowed. Ringo was caught in the middle. The magic that had united them was fading. Arguments replaced laughter. Sessions dragged on for hours, filled with silence and resentment. In 1970, the inevitable happened. The Beatles broke up. The news hit the world like a thunderclap. Millions of fans mourned as if they'd lost a friend. For John, it was bittersweet. He once said, "It wasn't like we'd broken up. It was like the dream was over." But endings are also beginnings. Out of the ashes of the Beatles, John Lennon was reborn, no longer part of a band, but as a man with a mission. He was ready to speak his truth, even if the world didn't want to hear it. John Lennon was about to begin the most honest chapter of his life. After the breakup of the Beatles, John Lennon stepped into a new world, one built not on fame, but on truth. He and Yoko Ono settled in New York City, a place that embraced their eccentricity and activism. For the first time in years, John felt free. In 1971, he released what would become his most iconic song, Imagine. A simple melody, a soft voice, and a dream, a world without greed, borders, or war. It wasn't just a song, it was a prayer, a vision of what humanity could be. John said, "Imagine is saying, can you imagine a world where peace is real?" The song captured the spirit of a generation weary of conflict. It became an anthem for dreamers, a call to believe in something better. Critics praised its simplicity. People around the world sang it like a hymn. But behind the peace and poetry, John was still restless. His activism made him a target. The U.S. government watched him closely, even trying to deport him. Still, he refused to be silenced. He marched, spoke out, and used his fame not for money, but for meaning. He once said, "A dream you dream alone is only a dream. A dream you dream together is reality." Through all the noise and controversy, Imagine stood as John Lennon's purest message: love without limits, peace without permission. In those few minutes of song, John Lennon became more than an artist. He became a symbol of hope, courage, and the belief that even one voice can change the world. By the mid-1970s, the noise around John Lennon began to fade. After years of chaos, headlines, and activism, he decided to step away from the spotlight. Fame had given him everything, but now he wanted something simple: a quiet life. When his son Sean was born in 1975, John made a decision that shocked the world. He quit music. No tours, no albums, no interviews. For 5 years he became what he called a house husband. While Yoko managed their business affairs, John stayed home, cooking, reading, and raising Sean. He'd walk through Central Park unnoticed, enjoying the peace he'd never known before. But even in that silence, the music never left him. He filled notebooks with lyrics, ideas, and reflections. The world might not have heard him, but his creativity was still alive. Then, in 1980, John Lennon returned. His comeback album, Double Fantasy, was a celebration of love and renewal, a musical conversation between him and Yoko. Songs like Just Like Starting Over showed a man rediscovering joy, not as a Beatle, but as a husband, a father, and a dreamer. Fans were thrilled. Critics hailed it as his rebirth. John told interviewers he felt more alive than ever, ready to create again, ready to share new music with the world. After years of silence, John Lennon was back. Older, wiser, at peace. He had finally found balance between fame and family, art and life. But fate had one last twist left to play. On December 8, 1980, New York City was calm, glowing under winter lights. John Lennon had spent the day doing what he loved most: creating. He gave an interview that morning, talking about his happiness, his love for Yoko, and his excitement for the future. He said he felt like life was finally beginning again. That evening, outside his home at the Dakota, fans waited for autographs. One of them was Mark David Chapman, a man whose obsession would turn deadly. John signed his copy of Double Fantasy, smiled politely, and went out for dinner with Yoko. Hours later, they returned home. As John stepped out of the car, 5 shots rang through the night. The world stopped. Within moments, John Lennon, the boy from Liverpool who dreamed of peace, was gone. News spread across the globe. Crowds gathered outside the Dakota, holding candles and singing Imagine. Radio stations stopped their programs to play his songs. For millions, it felt like losing a friend, a voice of truth, a dreamer who dared to believe the world could be better. But though his life was taken, his message never died. From "All you need is love" to "Imagine," John Lennon's words continue to echo. In protests, in classrooms, in hearts. His music still reminds us that love and peace are not naive ideas. They are choices. John once said, "If everyone demanded peace instead of another television set, then there'd be peace." He may be gone, but his dream lives on, in every note, every lyric, and every person who dares to imagine.